right, good afternoon and welcome everyone. I call this meeting of the LSU Faculty Senate to order on Tuesday, October 29th at 3:05 p.m. Roll has been taken by means of sign-in. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum? Thank you very much. We do have a quorum. We have a number of alternates today. So we have Michael Holt for Michael Russo, Charles Lee for Patty Lathan, Scott Abrahams for Bulent Yunel, Lizanne McCullough for Janine Gradesky, Kenneth Smith for Lauren Griffin, and Jennifer Blanchard for Yan Chen. We also have two guests who will be presenting with us today, Tracy Blanchard, Director of Disability Services, and Jackie Bach, Vice Provost for Academic Programs and Support Services. There are no public comments. The minutes from our meeting on September 19th, 2024 were distributed via email prior to today's meeting. Are there any amendments or corrections to the minutes? All right, hearing no amendments or corrections, the minutes are adopted as distributed. Thank you. We can now proceed with the Faculty Senate President's Report. Dear Senators, there's been a number of developments since we last met in September, and I'll provide a brief overview of the most notable ones, beginning with the Board of Supervisors meeting on October 10th. Board of Supervisors meeting. Hold on, let me pull this up. Sorry. The board took a number of actions at their most recent meeting, which I believe are of particular interest to the faculty. I will address the four most pressing items, and additional information about the first three can be found in the board's agenda and information packet available online. I've included the headings for these items as listed on the agenda to make them easier to locate in the supporting materials. Request to amend Article 2, Section 6 of the Regulations of the Board from Louisiana State University. This item creates a series of new titles for full-time, non-tenure track faculty whose primary responsibility is instruction. The new titles are Assistant Professor Instruction, Associate Professor Instruction, and Professor Instruction. I believe this is a positive change which provides a pathway for promotion for these faculty members which did not exist previously. Utilization of the new titles will require revision of Permanent Memorandum 23, ranks, provisions, and policies, governing appointments and promotions to the academic staff at the system level, and associated changes to policy statements at each campus. Request to amend Article 3, Section 1 of the Regulations of the Board from Louisiana State University. This section of the board regulations addresses sabbaticals, and the principal change added the following language. Institutions may restrict sabbatical eligibility to certain ranks and may take into account tenure status as appropriate to the mission of the institution. This action extends back to Faculty Senate Resolution 2209, creation of a committee to review sabbatical policies, which was adopted in November 2022 at the request of the Office of Academic Affairs. The committee made a number of recommendations for revisions to Policy Statement 12, Employee Leave, which this update to the board regulations will assist the administration in implementing. The committee recommendation, which is likely of the greatest interest, is that sabbatical eligibility be restricted to full-time tenured faculty who have completed at least 6 years of service and have not taken a sabbatical in the last 6 years. Resolution by the Board of Supervisors of Louisiana State University and Agricultural Mechanical College to address the decision in Students for Fair Admission versus President and Fellows of Harvard College et al. The board adopted this resolution in response to the recent U.S. Supreme Court case, Students for Fair Admissions. Among other items, the resolution directs the administration to, quote, undertake a comprehensive review of all programs and bureaucracies in which classifications are maintained on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, political views, or national origin, end quote, and eliminate them. It then further requires the administration to, quote, provide a full report, which shall include a detailed listing of all programs or bureaucracies that have been eliminated or will be eliminated within 90 days from the adoption of this resolution, end quote. Members of the FSEC were informed of the resolution 2 days prior to the meeting, and I was able to meet with the General Counsel's office that afternoon for additional information about its impacts. In considering the consequences of this resolution, it is important to note that academics, including teaching and research, are specifically exempted. The third to last paragraph of the resolution states, be it further resolved that nothing in this resolution shall be interpreted to limit academic freedom, including research, scholarship, grant funding, or fulfilling accreditation requirements. It is also my understanding that faculty and staff interest groups, such as caucuses, will not be impacted. The Staff Senate President and I will be meeting with members of some of these caucuses over the next few weeks, And I've also met with leadership from academic departments and programs who may have concerns about the resolution to provide additional information and hear questions that they may have. Changes to the board's bylaws. The board made a number of changes to their bylaws, including one which authorizes the chair to make an unlimited number of appointments to any search committee within the LSU system, including those for faculty positions. I only learned of this proposal at the meeting and immediately reached out to members of the administration afterwards to express my concern. President Tate contacted me that evening and assured me that the actions of the board were not directed at faculty, and he would work with the board to have this matter addressed. I am pleased to say that there have been very productive discussions since that time, including a meeting with Board Chairman Woods last week. The chairman echoed President Tate's comments, stating that the inclusion of faculty searches was an unintended outcome. He also said that he believes the board will be taking action at their meeting on December 5th to clarify the positions to which this appointment authority applies and that faculty hiring processes will be excluded. Although state open meetings laws precludes official action on or discussion of the proposed amendment collectively amongst themselves prior to the meeting, I trust that the chairman knows his committee and is operating in good faith. Finally, while I have concerns about the process which preceded the original change, I thank Chairman Woods, President Tate, and others within the administration for their efforts to address this issue. This change will allow us to continue to compete for the best and brightest faculty in the global marketplace, and I hope the collaborative process of the last few weeks can be a model for future engagement. Workday student rollout. I recently met with University Registrar Clay Benton to discuss the ongoing adoption of Workday Student and the plan for communicating upcoming changes to the faculty. The Workday Student team will begin messaging faculty in early November about what to expect and will continue regular communications from that point through final implementation around the end of the spring semester. Faculty who advise students will be the group most affected, while most faculty will see little to no impact even after the transition is complete. Please monitor your inbox for these messages and information about important dates and training opportunities. Summer course schedule. Faculty Center leadership has been in contact with the Office of the University Registrar and the Office of Academic Affairs about changes to the summer course schedule. These discussions were prompted by faculty who contacted us with their concerns regarding the scheduling of three credit hour courses immediately back to back with no time in between. Our discussions have been productive, and I look forward to continuing to work together to address each group's needs. Remote learning plan updates. The Office of Academic Affairs shared a draft of proposed revisions to the remote learning plan with the FSCC and other stakeholder groups for feedback. These changes incorporate information obtained from the recent survey of faculty on the implementation of the remote learning plan during Hurricane Francine. We generally viewed the new version favorably and provided minimal suggestions for revisions. Faculty Council meeting planning process. I've reached out to the offices of President Tate and Executive Vice President and Provost Haggerty to begin the process of scheduling this year's Faculty Council meeting. I will let you know once a date and time have been selected. And finally, new senator and committee chair orientations. The FSCC was pleased to host new senators and Senate committee chairs for our annual orientation. The event was held October 16th at the club at Union Square, and it was a pleasure to meet the new members and spend time with those individuals who are returning. My thanks to all who attended for taking the time out of their schedules to join us. Thank you for your attention, and with that, I'd be happy to address any questions that you may have. Dr. Shada, if you can just wait for the microphone, please.
Edward Shahada, Sociology, Criminology. Not so much a question, but just really a compliment. Thank you for two things. One, for recognizing the potential concern to faculty over the Board of Supervisors' decision to be able to potentially populate committees, even faculty hiring committees. And number two, thank you for working with Chairman Wood and with others in asserting gently, asserting the faculty interest in that matter. It's of a great concern to us.
Well, thank you. I certainly heard from a lot of faculty who are concerned about it, as I was. And, of course, I'm happy to do it, but it's not, none of this communication would be possible if we didn't have parties on the other side who are willing to engage. So I do thank President Tate for reaching out to me. I thank the chairman for making himself available, for understanding the concern that the faculty have about this and the impacts that this may have on our hiring processes. And to be clear, this isn't done yet. Right. So the final culmination of this will occur at the board meeting on December 5th. I anticipate remaining in touch with both the president and the chairman just to make sure that the process is proceeding smoothly. But I'm very encouraged that they very quickly recognize this, and we're happy to reach out to faculty, hear our concerns, and undertake a collaborative process to make sure that we get this resolved. But thank you for those comments.
Hi, Kat Jacquet, representing AAAS. I'm not really clear what it means that they're to undertake a comprehensive review of all programs and bureaucracies in which classifications are maintained on the basis of race, sex, color, so on and so forth. Can you put that in English for me? Like, what are they actually saying, and what's going to be dissolved? As like which offices are classifying people on the basis of race? Like, yeah, can you just like, what is that? Yeah, what does that mean?
Sure. So I can relay what was communicated to me. So if there are, for example, scholarships, which are exclusively designated for one particular group based on these categories, those scholarships may have to be amended in order to make them available to everyone, to remove that restriction based on these categorizations. If there is a program within a college that is open exclusively to certain individuals based on these categories, that also may have to be amended in some way or dissolved. What it does not apply to, and this is something that I raised with the General Counsel's office to make sure that this does not apply to academic programs as we think about programs as collectives of faculty who are working in certain issue areas. So I think about WGS, for example. This will have no impact on WGS. And we sort of went around with the language about program for reasons of expediency. It was left in. But this does not apply to those types of programs. So really what I understand the administration will be doing is looking to see what kind of programming efforts do we have largely on the administrative side that may be using these categories and providing some type of benefit for individuals based on that programming. And that is what is going to be identified and then amended or changed.
Okay, so like fellowships, like I believe Perkins or SREB, like those kinds of fellowships that are designated for minority students are now canceled.
I can't say that authoritatively. That would be a question for the General Counsel's office.
Yeah.
I think if they're under LSU's control, that might be where this where this may apply. If they are from an external body, that would be a question really that the General Counsel's office would have to address, because they're the ones who are really working on this beforehand, trying to understand sort of the scope of what this will entail.
Right.
But I'd be happy to reach out to them to get further clarification on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No, you're welcome. Yes, we have a question down in the front.
Revti Kumar from chemistry. The question I have is, we have a lot of students in the NSF Bridge to Doctorate program, which is meant specifically from the NSF for minority students. And it's not clear for me, as you just pointed out, whether this is not going to be allowed. This is the National Science Foundation's funding program. Is LSU going to say that, no, we can no longer have this program? I'm very confused.
Again, I think that would be a question for the General Counsel's office. I don't want to speak for them, but I see the Provost is raising his hand, so he may have more information to share.
Yeah, and a really important question. I don't know as I can authoritatively speak in the sense that it really will be ultimately a General Counsel's question, but I don't believe those will be affected. We're in the process right now of renewing the LSAMP program with NSF. And it explicitly excludes research, but NSF isn't. That's not exactly research. It's super closely related. I don't believe federal funding programs for this kind of thing will be affected by it, but we will have to wait for the General Counsel to weigh in for sure.
And there are some programs whose accreditors require some type of programming of this nature. Those will not be affected either, because accreditation requirements are explicitly excluded in the language of the resolution. So I think social work is one of these to which this would apply, and so they would not be impacted by the resolution. Any additional questions? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We will now take up our next piece of business. We are going to return to the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee. As you may recall, if you were here in September, we had elections for the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee. We have, in the intervening time, had another individual step forward who'd like to be considered for this committee. This is one of our elected committees, and so we have to have an election in the Senate. Is there a motion to hold an election for the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee? All right, thank you, Rosemary. Is there a second? All right, we have a second. Unless there are any objections. All right, hearing no objections, we shall proceed with the election for the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee. Just to remind you briefly about the charges, essentially this committee is to assure an effective advisory role for the faculty for the budget and planning processes, review and make recommendations regarding the master plan, and consider questions and issues which may be referred to it by the Faculty Senate or the FSEC. The complete list of charges may be found at the committee's webpage. There are 8 members of this committee. The Faculty Senate operating guidelines say 6 are to be elected and 2 appointed. However, the bylaws say this is to be an elected committee, so we elect all 8. They serve 3-year terms, except that the terms will be staggered. Members should be present or former members of the FSEC, present or former officers of a policy committee, or persons with particular or other appropriate experience. They may not concurrently serve in administrative positions as chairs or higher. The current 7 members of this committee are Dana Hawley, who is also the chair from the College of Business, James Canfield from Human Sciences and Education, Fabio Del Piero from Vet Med, Wei-Ling Song from Business, Robert Cook from Science, J. Michael Martinez from CHSE, and Adam Clay from HSS, who was elected at the September meeting. The individual who has put themselves forward is Tomislav Yelisievich, and he would like to be considered from the College of Veterinary Medicine, or the School of Veterinary Medicine, excuse me. At this point, we will open the nomination process to the floor in case anyone would like to make any additional nominations. We do, however, only have 1 position remaining. So if there is another nomination, we will do a roll call vote to select the representative. Are there any nominations from the floor for the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee? All right, hearing no additional nominations, the nomination period has closed, and Tomislav Yelisievich has been elected to the Budget and Planning Advisory Committee. Thank you. All right, that concludes the business for today, but we do have 2 presentations for you. The first of these presentations is going to be on Accessible Information Management Systems, or AIM, and it'll be given by Tracy Blanchard, Director of Disability Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Blanchard. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, cool. So I'm not going to take too much of your time today, and I definitely want to answer your questions about AIM, which is our disability management system. But before I start, I just want to give a little history, a little background. So I've been at LSU for 17 years. I was actually in disability services as their associate director 10 years ago. Then went to student advocacy and accountability. So some of you guys may recognize me from LSU Cares. And then now I'm back as the director in disability services again. So if you have a little bit of LSU whiplash, that's why. So if you know me from another location on campus, that's why. And so as of July 15th, I started my role as director in disability services. And I've been interested to see all of you today, and I'm looking forward to talking to you and hearing your questions about AIM. But I want to start off with a thank you and an apology. So my thank you is thank you for what you do for our students. Thank you for all the demands that are placed upon you. Thank you for everything that you bring to disability services and the wonderful work that you do with our students. I am truly grateful and blessed by what all of you do. And we want to be a partner in that process. And I realize here comes the apology part. I realize we haven't felt like a partner in that process. And unfortunately, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm not going to use your time to get into those today. But what I do want to say is, and I'm sorry, AIM was the perfect system to pick, and I'm going to tell you why and what it can do for you as faculty and what it does for our students and for disability services. But it was not rolled out in a great manner, right? Like you started getting emails, you were like, what are these? Where are they coming from? And where am I getting them? And I completely understand why that was the case, and I'm very sorry for that. Although it was rolled out at a time I was not in disability services, that's not an excuse, just a fact. I can promise you that if we implement new systems in disability services, I will be seeking the support of our faculty senate, and I will be seeking the support and feedback from you as faculty, again, wanting you to be partners in that process because it is such an important process. So some of the reasons we chose AIM and some of the things that AIM does, and I think the saddest part about the implementation of AIM not being more staged and implemented in a way where there were more opportunities for communication and more opportunities for training, was that we picked it not just because it worked for us, but because it's a national gold standard in the disability management field. And it's also a system that helps faculty accommodate students in a much more concise, organized, protected way. It actually protects you way more than you've been protected in the past. In the past, students were told to print out a letter. They could modify that letter, right? They could falsify that letter. I spent almost 10 years in SAA, so I know that to be true. And so this letter is digital. And so it protects the integrity of that document. And it's a process that's a federal, very serious process. It's putting the university on notice that we are required to provide set accommodations. And that process was dependent on a flimsy conversation and a flimsy piece of paper that took place while 3,000 other students were bombarding you after a class, right? So that really wasn't the best way to handle it. And sadly, there was no real record of that process. So there was nothing to protect you as faculty from a student coming at the end of the semester and saying, hey, my grade should be different because I didn't get my accommodations and now I want to do a grade appeal or I have a complaint. And there was no record of that process. Now there's a triplicate record of that process. It's all digital. There's a date and timestamp. You get one, I get one, the student gets one, everyone's happy. So the idea behind AIM was to digitize our process in a way that could protect us as instructors and faculty and us in disability services to be more efficient in our delivery of examinations in our testing center and resources and communication with our students. So just like there's not one perfect way that I have found on this campus to communicate to faculty, there's lots of little ways, right? There's no one perfect way to communicate with students that I've found either, right? Like that's really frustrating when you want to get information out. AIM allows me to reach out to all of my deaf and hard of hearing students at a moment's notice and make them aware of a scholarship that they might be interested in that applies to their disability. It allows me to send bulk emails to all of our students and have communication back and forth. It also is a portal that the student logs into, so the registration process is very simplified. I'm going to show you on our webpage in just a minute. And it allows the student to communicate directly with their access coordinator, who is basically like their person in disability services. That's the person that meets with them. That is the person that establishes what accommodations they should receive based on the functional limitations of their disability. And then that student actually is put into the AIM system. It pulls from mainframe. It will be pulling from Student Workday. We are on that as well. And they check off their classes and what accommodations they would want to receive in those classes based on what they were provided from our office. So they don't have to use all of the accommodations in all of the classes. They can pick and choose that, but they cannot pick and choose what accommodations they're provided. So once they check those off, you are sent a digital notification that there's a student in your class with a disability and sends you that email. That email, that mysterious email that you started getting that was probably very frustrating when you didn't know what it was or where it was coming from, and you were getting a lot of them. So you can archive those emails to keep a record. You can make a rule in your email to take them out. It does provide the link, as does our webpage. But basically, when you get that digital notification, you can click on the link. When you go into AIM, it should show you, and it should show you every course and every section that you teach, every student within those courses that is asking for an accommodation, what accommodation they're asking for. So it's keeping it very organized, low time. Like that was the whole idea of AIM. So it has some really good features that got overlooked in a bad implementation plan. And then if you go to the testing agreement, you can fill that out for your entire semester. You can copy and paste it if you teach multiple sections and your testing instructions are similar or the same. You can also assign a TA or a grad student that works with you in the class if you have that, to be the person to fill that out if you don't feel like filling it out, as long as it has your correct information in it and what you would like given to the student and what your policy is on scratch paper, for example. And so once you do that, you don't get any additional emails about that student and your work is done. if you have a question or an issue with the student, you can always call me. I'm Tracy Blanchard. I'm at tblanch@lsu.edu, and my number is 85969. I welcome a conversation. I have a little drink station I set up in my office. You can come have a cup of coffee if you love coffee. I have sparkling water. We can come have a conversation. And I love feedback. I'm a very open-minded person. I listen to all sides of opinions, all sides of stories, and I can appreciate everyone's different vantage points. So I love conversation. I'm in 129 Johnson. You are welcome to drop in anytime. If you're picking up a test or you're bringing something to disability services, or you just wanted to talk and have a question, please don't hesitate to do that. I think faculty have been fearful of doing that for whatever reason in the past. We're really nice in disability services, really dedicated group of folks. But I love faculty feedback. And so if you have feedback that you would like to give, if you have something that is frustrating you, or you don't understand a process or accommodation, I want to know that that's the case. I do want to communicate with you. So please let me know those things, and come by and have a cup of coffee with me anytime. So AIM makes our job a lot more efficient on our end, because I don't know if you guys know it, but we have our own testing center, and it tests a lot of students. We have 101 convertible spaces, meaning they can be paper and pencil tests, or they can be computer-based tests. And we gave almost 15, close to 16,000 exams last academic year. Just in comparison, the Himes Testing Center does about 100,000 in an academic year. So for us, that's a lot. And we have about 3,033 students total registered with our office. If you're ever curious about our statistics, another great point of AIM is we now have statistics on our students, right? We have digital records, and now I have analytics on our students. So I know how many students we have total. Every day I log into AIM and it tells me all of those great things. I can break them down by disability. I can communicate with them based on their disability group. Like for our neurodivergent students, we just started some programming for them. And so I can communicate directly to that population of students if I have something they may want to, involve themselves in that involves their specific disability. We have a lot of new initiatives in disability services. There's a lot we have to improve. There's a lot we have to grow. We have great support of our administration in doing that. So I look to make some very positive changes in disability services, but I don't plan on purchasing any new systems anytime soon, just to put you at ease. But I do want to show you one of the things we've updated, which is our webpage. So we did not have a great webpage. We were not a great model of accessibility in our webpage, which is a big no-no. So just wanted to show you guys a couple of things, because here is where I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to ask for your input and thoughts, not necessarily today, but certainly if you have a question or a thought. You'll see that I divided in 3 sections: students, parents and families, and faculty and staff. So your page has lots of good stuff on it, little nuggets. The instructional portal login is here too. If you don't have it in your email, you don't have it bookmarked or saved. Information on your rights, the student rights, syllabi statements, the faculty technology center if you are having questions about the accessibility of a handout. If it is a student with a disability that's registered and you have questions about accessibility within the documents or PowerPoints that you're presenting, you can always contact our office. That is never a problem. So I want to know what you guys, your thoughts, your questions about AIM. So I'm going to kind of ask you guys to take a look at our webpage if you have that time and you want to give feedback. But one of the things I want to see on the webpage for faculty is more guidance for faculty. So if you let me know what would be helpful, I will put it on our webpage. So for example, University of Alabama, my peers there have an excellent webpage with faculty guidance where they sort of define different types of disabilities and what those accommodations mean. And then they look at things like consideration for absences that are very tricky. They have a rubric on their webpage for, like, if my class meets 3 times a week and it's a 12-week course and it's a lecture style course, what then would be the core components? How much can a student miss and still complete the core components or the fundamental pieces of that course? That decision is for the instructor or faculty of record to make. But sometimes it's hard to know where that place is. And so if you want our guidance in that, you can certainly call us, but it might be helpful to have a rubric like that on our page. So if those are some ideas that you like and that you would like to see on there, email me, come see me, talk to me about it, because this is the part where I am asking for feedback, as I promised, and I will continue to ask for your thoughts and your feedback. So I think I've covered most of the basics about AIM. AIM is, in my field, in the disability field, I'm a rehabilitation counselor and a licensed professional counselor. It is the ultimate system. It is used by every SEC peer we have. It is used nationally and internationally. It is the gold standard. It's used by Yale. It's used by Harvard. It was actually a disability center that had a lot of tech knowledge that actually created AIM for these purposes because they were growing too big to efficiently handle and manage their student accommodations and tests. And so it was made for experts by experts, right? So we want that type of a system. It was the right system, the wrong implementation. So the idea behind it is to make our job easier and your job easier. You can also, when you log into AIM in your portal, you can see who a student's access coordinator is. So if you had a question about consideration for absences or about an accommodation in your particular course that you a student has in your course, you know directly who to contact, but you can always come through me as well in disability services. So what questions do you guys have? Dr. Shahada, I saw your hand come up first.
Thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate it. First of all, appreciate the apology, but to be clear, it's not really your fault. You inherited this and you inherited some of this stuff.
But I would have picked it and I begged for it 8 years ago. So I have to own up to that. I
Okay.
went to AHEAD, which is our National Disability Higher Education Conference, and I begged them. And you know why we didn't get it 8 years ago? It's not because of implementation, it's because of mainframe, the word we
So-
don't want to say out loud, right? So the reason we got AIM was because of Student Workday. It was because
Yeah.
we offered to be the guinea pig for Student Workday so that we could get a better system for everyone involved.
So I have no doubt that it makes your life easier, and that's not a trivial thing because you are a hardworking and dedicated group of people, and that's my 32 years of experience at LSU. Never had a problem. It is a difficult system to navigate. It's not intuitive. There isn't a kind word to say about it in my department.
I'm going to your apartment soon, by the way.
Okay,
So it's
okay.
probably more
We'll be
fun.
nice and we'll have muffins maybe.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not, it's difficult. And so, but you know, a group of PhDs can manage and muddle their way through it and grumble and so on, but it is taking me more time than the previous system. But the other problem is I'm an evidence-based guy, and the last 2 semesters I've noticed that out of a class of 55, 5, 6, 7 ask for an accommodation, but only 1 or 2 actually activate that accommodation for the exam.
Mhm.
And what my concern is that if a group of PhDs are finding it difficult, the students who are, it's a population that is identified and uniquely unsuited to navigate complex systems are not using it. I'm only getting 1 or 2. So in that sense, it's a step back. And I'm wondering, okay, don't dump it. Don't, you know what can we do here? Because this next exam I've got on Thursday, 1 student out of 6 has sought the accommodation. And I've asked around and it's just, it's confusing to them. And so that is the concern. I'm having a serious concern about it. It's more time for faculty and it's not being utilized by the students. And that's the bottom line evidence right
Yeah.
there. That's so.
So I'm wondering, because AIM didn't have a ton of training coming out, and one of the things I want to do and ask to do with sociology is to come and do a training from I can do a user, it's kind of a mock one that I do. I thought about doing it today, but I didn't know if we wanted to get that in depth today with it, but I can see what you see. I can come in from your vantage point and show you how to navigate those things. But you're right, it was very clunky at first because again, it was implemented in stages. There was issues happening in disability services, no excuses, just the truth, right? Like that's what was happening at the time. Students are registering at typical rates. So I'm assuming they're able to get into the portal, come into the portal, send their documentation in, because we're seeing it at normal rates, right? We have traditionally, and one of the things faculty may not be aware of is there's many students who register with us because of parent pressure, because they're worried they might need us at a point, but don't want to use us now and don't fully utilize the services. They may register and go without any accommodations, which is very unfortunate and not what we tell them to do, even if they have a very controlled, manageable condition, because conditions exacerbate with changes and stress. Any condition, medical, psychiatric, learning, any of those things can exacerbate when you add change. You take them out of your normal environment. You don't have mom and dad to make sure you have your medicine. You may not have the financial stability you once had. You may not have the living stability you once had. And your schedule and your stress level have definitely changed. Your sleeping and your eating habits have changed, which affect medical and psychiatric conditions extremely. So We always tell our students to register and use the testing center and use the accommodations because you can't go back. You can only go forward, right? Accommodations are not retroactive. So if it's beneficial to come and talk to your class, to come and train them on how to use the system, I haven't personally been given that feedback. That's interesting feedback. I'm not saying it's not correct feedback. I haven't heard that from our student population, but if that is the case, I need to hear that from our student population for sure so that I can address those concerns.
Are you at liberty to say how much the system is costing us?
The system costs, yeah, I mean, I don't know of any confidentiality reason I shouldn't. The system costs roughly about $30,000. And it takes the place of probably 10 full-time employees just off the bat in our testing center.
30,000 per year?
Yes, it's an annual license, yes. Yep. Other questions?
Thanks for coming, and I echo many of Dr. Shahada's comments, including thanking you for your willingness to acknowledge that the rollout has been less than ideal. In my stints on the faculty senate and more broadly at LSU, I don't think I've ever been apologized to for a cumbersome administrative process before, ever in 16 years. So it's actually really impressive, and it was disarming when you said that. So. One of my questions has to do with the testing center.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a question that comes back to the issue of funding for DS and perhaps underfunding. Is it true that there are no human proctors in the testing center?
It's all human proctoring.
So anytime a student takes a test in DS, there's at least some other human
There's
being.
a minimum of 4 humans just in the testing center, and we are on the other. If you've been in Johnston, to the right is the testing, to the left is like my office and the other access coordinator's office. So there are many persons in that testing center. Now we are short 1 testing coordinator, but we're in the process of hiring someone. So that position should be filled. Yeah, we couldn't manage if we didn't have humans because they have to sign in. We have to go over and make sure, we have to search them. We have to make sure that they're, have what they need, but they understand what they can and cannot use. We have to make sure they put their things in their locker so they don't have phones, they don't have other things. There's a procedure that they follow. We actually did also partner with Hines Testing Center to where some of that will be a little bit easier for our students. So it mirrors a process and it also is less expensive to purchase some of these digital software programming. So we kind of went in on some of those things. So our students only have to log in one time. And we don't have to go add cumbersome passwords, which takes us then away from that front area where students are checking in, signing in. It messes up our rhythm, right? Like, and it makes the students feel like when they go to sign in, they're unattended, and we don't want that whatsoever. So we, testing and disability services is supposed to help for conditions like anxiety. We're not supposed to be enhancing it, right? And so my role and my job is to make sure that we're being more efficient in the way that we're handling those things. We are putting more human touches on those, and we are making our students feel welcomed and safe in our environment. And that's something that was not always there, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm Kat Chuck. I only have a small class this semester, but next semester I'll have a large lecture. So yeah, I have 2 students who need accommodations and they use Glean. Let me rephrase that. They don't use Glean because it's so terrible. So I've just assigned other students as their note takers and they're just doing it to be nice. So I have 2 questions. Number 1, can we please have our note takers back instead? But then the other question is I have a real concern about Glean and students recording our lectures and then a for-profit company basically owning our lectures. That's intellectual property. So yeah, can we go back to the old system?
A lot to say about Glean. And
Yeah,
to
the students hate it
actually
too.
Speak just about Glean so that we can go through it and go through all of those concerns that you have that you just voiced so well. So if I could do that at that time, I would love to be able to come back and to talk through all of those issues specifically with Glean.
Okay, yeah, because
I just think it's a longer conversation.
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
not trying
agree.
to avoid the answer.
Yeah, because all I've heard from the students is negative as well on Glean. So
Okay.
Yeah, we have had discussions. Director Blanchard has agreed to come back at a later meeting. So just for today, we want to keep it on AIM and the website, but we do want to discuss Glean at a future time, and I'm sure the director would be happy to speak with you after the meeting if you have particular questions.
This for a neurodivergence programming. However, come visit me, come call me, email me. We can have a long conversation about Glean. I just think to do it justice and to really answer your questions, we need to have a bigger conversation about Glean. Questions about accommodations, things you would like to see on our webpage? Does the guidance sound anywhere in the ballpark of helpful to you guys?
Hello, I'm Lisanne McCullough, School of Kinesiology. One thing I agree about the Glean concerns. The rollout, sure, was clunky, but once I got the handle of it, I've had no issues with it. I have tons of students using it. Nobody avoids using it for the exam. So I just thought I would share that it seems like in my experience, it was, other than the initial rollout, it's been fine. I mean, in terms of user friendliness for us. And then of course, knowing that there's humans in that office, I can call at any point, and y'all are very helpful. So thank you. The new timelines are the main thing that I've had, where they're still operating off of old dates. So if we can have those a little bit more, I don't know, are they on? Maybe I missed that. Are they posted on here? Okay, I might have missed it.
No, for finals, we actually have satellite locations, which is actually only going to be 2 locations this year. And given that law finals, it's our Armageddon for finals, it intersects with undergrad finals in the fall always, for whatever reason. That is saying something. So we actually, if you don't know, we pipe and drape rooms in the Union, the Chapelaya space. We wire them. We do souped up EduROM for the software system. We add outlets and power strips and all the things. We have a hub in career services space, which is adjacent or really across the way from the Cotillion Ballroom, where paper-based exams will be pipe and draped and given in there, and all computer-based will be in Johnston. So I think it should eliminate a lot of confusion and distraction of our staff, because if you don't have as many locations, you can split your staff up much more efficiently and effectively. And so I think it's going to help with a lot of the displacement during like finals and other times. We do have a period of time for finals that is longer in terms of getting your registration in, making your requests. So because, as I mentioned before, we have 3,300 students, we have 101 spaces. Everyone wants to take a final with us. And if you do the math on that, you understand why I have to go to different locations to be able to provide those. I also have to be ready and prepared to provide those accommodations that are federal in nature and make sure I'm doing it to the threshold of the accommodation. So to do that, I do need a little prep time. Our testing center does need a little prep time to make that happen. We are working on 2 time sets to decrease. When you give an exam and you fill out that testing agreement, you can put in your preference of picking the exam up or having the proctored exam uploaded into AIM, which by the way is a much more secure place for an exam to live. Than in an email or randomly in a envelope. And that time frame, we are trying to get from 72 hours with our midterms, and after the testing center has been pretty slammed with that. The scanning of that, we are trying to get that time frame down, and we are trying to get our registration time frame down. Right now, it is on par with our SEC peers. I will say that. However, I personally would like to see it be a shorter window of time.
I think whatever the window needs to be is great for y'all to be able to process that amount of people. Yeah. I'm really great with a lot of reminders. So I'm assuming students are too. So if there's a way to make that a little, and we'll all get used to the new times, but.
So it's on, when you go to the webpage originally, it's on there. And then, like I mentioned, we have that bulk email capability. If you see it in the yellow bar, we have email capability. And so we are already sending reminders about finals, and we send very detailed reminders about finals and places you can get help and assistance if you are struggling to schedule that exam with us, or if you are new to our office and don't know how to schedule those exams, which again is something we go over with our students, but sometimes 2 and 3 times is the charm, right? One time doesn't get it. So those mechanisms are in place. And when they log into their AIM portal, you don't see this, but I see this because I put it there. They're seeing reminder, reminder, reminder. It is there. We are reinforcing it in every human way possible for multiple learning styles. So it is there, and it is being done often and frequently. Sure. Thank you for the feedback. Hey.
Hello,
can
hello.
hear you
There we
right
go.
there, but
A very specific question. Thank you for coming and doing the presentation. I was just scrolling through the website as you were talking, and I noticed you on the website you talk about universal design.
yes.
So a very kind of specific question. If you have a course that is universally designed, do students still get accommodations?
And so I think I would have to know more information about that. But traditionally speaking, if it is a wonderful universal design,
You're minimizing.
Yeah, we're
right.
minimizing accommodations, right? Like just like for our LSU online folks, they already have many things set up in a remote way to where those accommodations aren't as warranted at that point, right? So it depends on the disability and it depends on the class and the format of the class and all those good things. But I would say that that's what we're looking to get to, where every student has every advantage and we have equal advantages. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Can we perhaps have time for one more question if there's another question for Director Blanchard?
Thank you. Just a quick question to go back to Gleam. Is there a plan to bring note takers back or is there not?
So still being worked through, but what I will say is peer note taking is inherently problematic and not accessible. And that's the real issue, right? So just as we see complaints about Glean, we see complaints about peer note taking and almost the exact same complaint, right? And so if you have any ideas on great note taking strategies, let me know because I would love to hear them. But what's unfortunate is Office of Civil Rights and, different lawsuits that have happened throughout the United States, as well as, unfortunately, with disability services has shown us that we have to make sure we are putting control of that accommodation in the hands of that student in a timely way, and that they are able to access it at a higher level of accessibility, particularly digitally, which is why it provides the transcript, which is because you can put that into like a reader, for example. And it has to fit for a variety of disabilities. So we have a lot of constraints on what that looks like. So it's not like we want to, utilize something that makes anyone feel uncomfortable, right? But we do have to reach the threshold of that accommodation. Yeah. In a nutshell.
And I agree with the first thing that you said is that I found the note taker system to be fraught.
It's inherently flawed. Yes.
Perhaps no more or less fraught than the Gleam system.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Director Blanchard, for the presentation. We will definitely have the director back at another opportunity for Glean. Thank you.
Hey, Blanchard, LSU.edu, 129 Johnson, come visit. Thank you guys so much.
Right, and our next and final presentation for today is going to be on the recently issued Grammarly guidance, and the presentation will be made by Jackie Bach, Vice Provost for Academic Programs and Support Services.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks for inviting me to come back. Nothing has been released yet. Just want to make that clear, but thank you. So as you may have heard of 2 meetings ago, Dan said I would be coming in today to talk to you all about Grammarly. I think a story in the Reveille ran anyway. Am I right? I don't remember who was interviewed as part of that story, but it wasn't me or anybody from my committee. So here we are. So Anessa asked us to put together a committee early last year to talk about Grammarly and its implications for campus, specifically our students. And here are the members. I just want to thank them ahead of time: Jenny Baumgardner, Brandon Common, Sarah Roser, Sarah Sims, and Leslie Tuttle. I invited them to come today, but they were busy. So a little fun. Raise your hand if you're using Grammarly. Okay, thank you for being honest. Raise your hand if you allow your students to use Grammarly. Great. Raise your hand if you think your students are using it. Great. They are, and we'll get to those numbers in a moment. So what is Grammarly? Just for those of you who are not familiar with Grammarly, there are 2 versions. One is just Grammarly, sort of natural Grammarly, which will look at your writing, tell you where to put your commas, do your subject verb agreement, and maybe suggest some stylistic things to improve your writing. There's also Grammarly AI, which sort of functions in a similar way as a ChatGPT. So you can, for example, for this presentation, one of the slides, I took text, I put it into Grammarly AI, and I said, generate bullet points. And then I said, please make these bullet points parallel. And then I said, please make these bullet points persuasive. So, it just allows you to do fun little stuff like that. So here's a little data regarding campus usage of Grammarly. So Grammarly has a count of everybody who has an account that uses an LSU EDU address. They're not able to sort of figure out who's alumni, who's faculty, who's staff, and who are students. But this just gives you an idea of how widespread Grammarly is, at least in the LSU EDU landscape. So just a brief outline of sort of what happened. So ITS had received a number of requests to purchase Grammarly for faculty and staff on campus. And they went ahead and did that. But then also at the same time, student government was interested in using their tech fee money to pay for Grammarly as well. And we approached Faculty Senate, and then they recommended that we put together a group of committee to consider what guidance we can provide faculty or students to purchase Grammarly using their tech fee money. So this is just a little rundown of those steps. So our committee, we do have about 1.25 pages of recommendations for faculty regarding Grammarly and AI usage sort of all together. Really the main, I guess, recommendation from our committee is to let your students know what your policy is and make sure that policy is in your syllabus. And I think more and more faculty are doing that. At least that's what I'm hearing from SAA. So those of you who have an AI policy on your syllabus, thank you. You can go to the faculty toolkit. If you Google LSU faculty toolkit, and it will give you sample syllabi statement that you can cut and paste into your syllabus. It can be no, don't use AI or anything like this at all. Or it can be yes, use it whenever you want. Or in the case of the class that I taught this summer, I said you can use it on specific assignments, but in this case, I'd rather you not use it. So you have a lot of latitude if you communicate that with your students. We also recommend that you talk with your students about their usage. Poll them. How many of them are using it? How many of them are actually paying for it? I mean, it's just a good way to sort of get to know where they stand on AI and in particular Grammarly. Grammarly also launched a new feature just this semester called authorship. So it functions within something like a Google Doc, and it will it can generate a report that will demonstrate things like how much of the text was cut and pasted from another document, or what changes the student made regarding their use of Grammarly. So if they used it to generate text, it will tell you. If they used it to fix their commas, it will tell you that as well. And thinking about these, I don't know what you'd call them, improvements, additions, you know, I want to be wary of putting more work on faculty. So, you know, I wouldn't recommend that you have every student necessarily turn in an authorship report with an assignment unless you're willing to look at all of them. But, you know, you might tell your students, I want you to go ahead and generate one, and I might spot check to see if you did it or not. So I think that that's something that I've been thinking about moving forward with these things. Another thing Grammarly would really like to do is, you saw the numbers on the earlier slide with all the counts that are active right now, about 20,000 in Grammarly. We purchased Grammarly 5,000 accounts for faculty and staff, and right now only 300 of them have been accessed. So Grammarly would like to do a relaunch just to sort of educate faculty and staff on, hey, did you know you have Grammarly? You know, do you want to try it out? You know, here's how you can try it out if you're interested. They also provide a robust sort of menu of trainings or informational sessions, you know, more resources than you could ever want or need, and are happy to do so. So I think they're going to get on that soon. So hopefully those people on faculty and staff who are paying for it right now won't have to anymore. Oh, yes, okay. So this is a headline I took from, I think it was a higher ed article recently, maybe you've seen it, which says, you know, your AI policy is already obsolete. We have something like Grammarly already that's accessible to students. It's called a Draft Coach, and it's sort of embedded in our Microsoft 360. I don't think a lot of people know how to access it. It's kind of cumbersome, but it's there if students want to use it. You know, in this article, one of the things that they said is, you know, in the future, students are going to open up a document and it's going to say to them, what are you working on today? And students are just going to be prompted, to use these tools in new ways that are just going to become part of all the systems, I think, that we use, at least the ones that keep up with AI. So I think, as faculty, and I think reflective of the deep conversations that we had this summer as a committee, and they were long and very passionate, we have some thinking to do about, how we might use these tools to foster and support deep learning. How can we think about teaching writing in a new way, or, what policies and practices are going to work best for our disciplines, knowing that this is a landscape in which we're teaching right now. The library site has a pretty good page. I've got the QR code up here if you want to look at that with suggestions and ideas for teaching with AI. And then here's the Grok article if you're interested in learning more about Draft Coach, and perhaps you want to use it as well. I think that's it. Yes. Can we limit how many questions I have to take?
Found one from marketing. Our department chair has found department funding to fund us all for ChatGPT.
Okay.
And I wonder, are people not getting Grammarly because they're already on the ChatGPT, or?
Well, according to the number of licenses, somebody on campus is getting Grammarly. I just don't know where it is. That's very interesting to hear about your department, though, making an investment. So
Not for
sure, right? Yes.
Yes, we do have time for just a couple more questions, if there are any questions for the Vice Provost.
I'm afraid my question is actually really dumb. It's not, it takes it back several steps. Is this something that works as a plug-in with Word or with Google Docs? So I don't have any idea what you're talking about.
Question, and that's one that I had too. So as a Grammarly user, it's everywhere. So it's in my Moodle, it's in my email, it's in my Word documents, it's in Excel, it's everywhere. But I think you can turn it on and off for applications. Grammarly is pretty, customizable. We can also limit who has access to the accounts that we purchase as well. For example, we could say no freshmen get access to Grammarly, only upper class students and things like that. So yes, it's embedded in every application, including Moodle. Good, it's a good question.
And I think these will be our last two questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I also have a very simple question. I actually went on Tigerware the other day and was looking for Grammarly. It's not on there.
Okay. If you want to send me an email, I can send you some instructions, Bach, or I don't know if it's on our library site QR code, but I should have brought instructions about how to access it. I apologize. June.
I just found the place where you can get it. It's on LSU's Information Technology Services website. I don't know who you have to request it from, though.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Vice Provost Bach, for this presentation. And I will say that the question of the acquisition of Grammarly for students using the student technology fee is still an outstanding question that is still with the Senate. So the step here of asking the joint, sort of administrative faculty committee to get together with best practices was meant to inform a later decision about whether we do want to allow them to provide Grammarly using student technology fee funds. So I anticipate that will likely be a piece of business brought before the Senate at a future meeting. If you want to kind of digest this, maybe disseminate the information with your colleagues so you can get some feedback about their perspective on this, and then we will bring this back to you at a later time. That concludes the agenda for today. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, Dr. Shahada, the second from Rosemary. All those in favor, please say aye. All right, thank you. And I will see you on November 20th, which is going to be the date of our next meeting. Yeah, 3 p.m. on the 20th.